Germany exposes the bare truth in Ukraine. Greetings, everyone. Today, there is more news related to the internal power struggle in Kyiv after Yerem fell from power, and we will explore this topic right now. Germany exposes the harsh truth of the Ukrainian high command. Now, not only Russia, but also the German media outlet Bild has caused a shock by confirming that Pokrov has fallen into Russian hands and that 1,000 Ukrainian soldiers are surrounded in Minrod. They can only receive supplies by drones and robots. And if resupply can only be done this way, then the issue is no longer whether Minker is defended or not, but how to save the soldiers from this furnace of fire. Public comments on German media in December show that the Ukrainian high command lacked a clear withdrawal plan. In reality, Ukrainian generals had many opportunities to break the encirclement at Pokrov-Minograd, but they did not do so. Instead, Ukraine sent more and more reserve forces there, with the main goal of delaying the collapse of the Pokrov fortress. Now, withdrawal is impossible. For nearly 3 months, wounded Ukrainian soldiers have not been evacuated from Pokrov. They are all trapped in the basements of buildings. In this situation, Bild exposing the truth has put pressure on both the Ukrainian high command and European allies. The message is very clear. If Kyiv does not make an urgent decision, the consequences will be catastrophic. But instead of making rational choices to preserve the lives of soldiers, the commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian armed forces, General Ski, stated on December 4th that he still insists that Porov has not fallen into Russian hands because his forces are still holding the northern area and protecting this city, as well as nearby Minas, which is restraining the enemy's advance. His statement means there will be no withdrawal order, as Bild called for the day before. For Kyiv, political factors matter more than military ones. Clearly, the Zelensky administration is stuck between two scenarios. If they admit that a withdrawal is needed, it means acknowledging their weakened position on the battle. But if they force the soldiers to hold out until they are surrounded and destroyed by Russia, Western media, especially Bild, will expose them. So it is no surprise that on December 3rd, the Ukrainian General Staff accused Bild of publishing false information, claiming that Pokrov had fallen to Russia. But an elephant can't pass through the eye of a needle. Ukrainian MP Bejuslaya publicly criticized General Ski in parliament. She said that Por has been completely occupied and Minrat is fully encircled. Russian forces are advancing toward Zaporizhia and have long entered Constantinople. She called for the dismissal of General Ski, reforming the general staff and auditing the military. While the battlefield situation is dire, the rear is not any better. The deliberate UAV attack at dawn on December 4th targeting energy infrastructure, especially destroying transformer stations in Odessa province, is the continuation of Russia's strategy to create an energy crisis and retaliate for attacks on Russian ships and facilities. French President Macron's call for China to support a temporary halt to attacks on Ukraine's critical infrastructure indirectly reveals how catastrophic the situation is. Ukraine's air defense system has completely weakened and cannot control the skies. The worst part is that the Zelensky administration is hiding the risk of a nuclear power disaster from the public. In recent weeks, all operating units at Ukraine's nuclear power plants have been forced to reduce output. The simple reason is that Russia has destroyed their transformer stations. Without these transformers, the plants cannot supply electricity to Ukraine's grid. Macron is currently visiting China, hoping Beijing will support the ceasefire proposal to save Ukraine from an infrastructure collapse. However, China plays no role in peace negotiations, and Moscow will not agree to the proposal. This means Ukraine will continue facing a dark winter. And that is not all. Ukraine is also experiencing extremely serious internal crises, of which the dismissal of Chief of Staff Yerema is only the beginning. The Ukrainian Defense Intelligence has pointed guns at the army, taken soldiers hostage, and revealed 3 shocking secrets. While important events unfold at the front lines and negotiation forums, another battle for interests is happening near Kyiv. On December, a shootout occurred between special forces of the Defense Intelligence Directorate, called GUR, and soldiers of the A-4005 Ukrainian Army unit. The clash took place at the J-10 nursing home in southern Kyiv. Pravda of Ukraine wrote that the special forces broke into the G10 nursing home, smashed the gate and fence, fired into the air and ground, and detained 10 soldiers of Unit A4005 as prisoners, causing significant injuries. According to the source, GUR forces later released the prisoners and fortified themselves inside the building. The source also said the GUR refused to allow law enforcement or the army to enter. According to Pravda, after the attack, the Intelligence Directorate signed an agreement with the nursing home to rent the facility. Previously, this area was used by the Army Command with permission from Kyiv city authorities and the nursing home director. Thus, the shootout was simply a dispute over control of the nursing home between the Ukrainian Army and the Defense Intelligence Directorate. The shootout also reveals 3 important details. First, it confirms that nursing homes and hotels have long been used as residences for Ukrainian soldiers, something Kyiv always denies. Recall that 2 weeks after Russia attacked Ukraine on February 24, 2022, a nursing home in Stara Krasnyanka, about 580 kilometers from Kyiv, was struck. Kyiv blamed Russia for killing over 50 civilians, but a report by the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights at the end of June showed that Ukrainian soldiers were partly responsible because they entered the nursing home and indirectly turned staff and the elderly into human shields. According to Article 28 of the Geneva Convention, the use of human shields is strictly prohibited. Second, it reveals that the war with Russia is approaching its end and marks the beginning of a new conflict between the Ukrainian military and intelligence services over the country's remaining profitable assets. Finally, this shootout shows that the removal of Yerem has weakened President Zelensky's control over his power system. Seeing the leadership's weakness, the military has revolted to seize benefits. As if internal turmoil were not enough, Kyiv is also facing a new crisis from the outside. Bad news for Europe. Ukraine disobeys orders and endangers NATO. The attack on 4 Russian commercial ships in the Black Sea and Baltic Sea led Russia to retaliate against Ukraine's energy infrastructure, forcing European allies, despite financial strain like Germany and the Netherlands, to urgently allocate funds to support Ukraine's energy sector. But the incident did not end there. Another explosion shook the Black Sea, 36 nautical miles east of Romania's Constanta port. According to Reuters, Romania's defense ministry stated on December that they had to destroy a Ukrainian CB maritime drone due to fears it threatened maritime activities. This CB boat had been used to attack Russian ships, and now suddenly it poses a direct threat to a NATO member's maritime transport. This was not a normal incident. It was a sign of Ukraine's desperation. Kyiv no longer follows anyone's orders and dares to do whatever it wants. This signals extremely bad news for Europe. What pushed a NATO member to use explosives to destroy Ukrainian equipment? The reason is simple. From the start of the conflict, Ukraine tried to drag at least some NATO countries into the war to share the burden. But NATO only wanted a proxy war, using Ukraine to weaken Russia. Therefore, the war must remain within Ukraine's borders. However, the CB explosion off Romania shows Kyiv has crossed NATO's red line. Ironically, Romania and Poland have become central hubs for transporting Western weapons to Ukraine. Tons of goods pass through Romanian ports, and now they risk being attacked by a weapon they themselves supplied. The explosion near Constanta signals that Europe's Ukraine project is slipping out of control. In desperation, Kyiv may make independent decisions that threaten European security. Explosive leaked audio reveals European leaders plotting protection strategies. In an unsurprising development, European leaders are accusing the U.S. of attempting to betray Ukraine and President Zelensky in negotiations with Russia. French President Macron is said to have stated there is a possibility the U.S. will abandon Ukraine on territorial issues without clarifying security guarantees. Macron warned of great danger for Zelensky. A leaked transcript of a phone call among European leaders discussing how to protect Zelensky and Kyiv's interests was published by German magazine Der Spiegel on December 4th. According to the report, participants included Macron, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, Finnish President Alexander Stubb, and of course, Zelensky. During the call, Merz said Zelensky should be extremely careful in the coming days, and warned that the Americans are playing games with him and with us. The Polish president then added, "We must not leave Ukraine and Volodymyr alone with these people." NATO's Rutte said, "I agree. We must protect Volodymyr." Based on their tone, Zelensky appears to be in a weak position and being pressured by U.S. officials. This was likely an intentional leak, a strong signal to Trump because Europe did not support Trump's peace plan from the beginning. According to Spiegel, German Chancellor Merz publicly commented on the leak and emphasized, "No decision about Ukraine and Europe will be made without Ukrainians and Europeans. No peace will be imposed on Ukraine." The conversation also revealed that European leaders consider the freezing of Russian assets as Europe's exclusive right, amid rumors that the U.S. is ready to return those assets to Russia as part of a peace deal. Even more interesting, the leak occurred exactly when Trump's envoys Steve W.C. and Jared Kushner had just met Putin in Moscow to revive Trump's 28-point plan. The U.S. and Russia agreed to keep the content secret. European leaders are extremely concerned, while Zelensky said, "Our mission now is to obtain complete information about recent U.S.-Russia negotiations." Europe leaders hoped to meet WC and Kushner on Wednesday, but the meeting never happened, and the delegation flew straight back to the U.S. Remember, on the flight back, WC refused to meet both European leaders and Zelensky. Why did the U.S. refuse to meet Zelensky? Former Ukrainian presidential advisor Arestovich believes the U.S. and Russia may be discussing forcing Zelensky to resign so another Ukrainian representative can sign the peace agreement. When asked why WC didn't meet Zelensky after meeting Putin, Arestovich replied, "Zelensky has only one task: being removed or resigning. After that will be a ceasefire, then elections, then a peace deal signed by new Ukrainian leaders." Thus, each passing day shows Ukraine's voice in negotiations matters less to the U.S. Trump and his envoys don't even want to meet Zelensky. Now the Ukrainian president has only one option: rely on Europe. European leaders and media are openly saying Trump's peace plan fully compromises with Russia and undermines Europe's strategy. As the U.S. sidelines Europe to negotiate with Russia, European leaders appear to be trying to pull another major power to their side. Two visits, Putin in India and Macron in China, are telling. The interesting point is, two rival European leaders visited two rival Asian countries almost simultaneously and were both warmly welcomed. This reflects intense geopolitical competition, France-China cooperation to push Russia toward a temporary ceasefire. Will it succeed? Macron's three-day visit to China, beginning in December, was accompanied by lavish ceremonies, banquets, red carpets, and cultural events. President Xi Jinping said China and France agree that both should uphold multilateralism, equal dialogue, and expanded cooperation, fully demonstrating the global strategic value of China-France relations. While diplomatic in tone, the core message is clear. They are challenging U.S. dominance by suggesting a China-France partnership could reduce Washington's global influence. Standing beside Macron, Xi called China and France independent powers with strategic vision that should contribute to building a multipolar and orderly world. He added that both sides should understand and support each other on core interests. This was not mere formal diplomacy. It was an attempt to draw Macron, the strongest advocate of European strategic autonomy, closer to China's geopolitical ambitions. Note, in 2023, Macron insisted Europe should not act as a vassal of the U.S. or be dragged into any conflict between the U.S. and China over Taiwan. China sees this as a crack between the U.S. and Europe, an opportunity to offer cultural soft power, business deals, and influence. For Macron, the visit is a chance for France to access China's vast market, investment opportunities, and economic cooperation. France's trade deficit with China exceeded 20 billion euros last year, making economic cooperation a top priority. Macron also believes China can pressure Russia into negotiations on Ukraine. He confidently told Xi that their cooperation is decisive, referring directly to Ukraine. Macron said, "I hope China will join our efforts to achieve, as soon as possible, at least a temporary ceasefire to halt Russia's attacks on Ukraine's critical infrastructure." Interestingly, this comes when Europe is being sidelined by the US and Russia, and France seems to rely on China. Meanwhile, the Wall Street Journal reports China also wants a seat at the negotiating table. If the US and Russia shape the post-war order without Beijing, China loses influence in Europe. Therefore, China is trying to enter the process before deals are made. Macron's move toward China may strain France-US ties. China may exploit Europe's internal divisions regarding autonomy, NATO's role, and tensions with the US to gauge how far Europe is willing to drift from Washington. At the same time Macron is in China, Putin is in India, China's regional rival. Modi warmly welcomes Putin, a message to Europe and China. Putin's visit to India attracted immense attention. Flight trackers showed huge public interest. Indian PM Modi broke diplomatic protocol by personally welcoming Putin at Palam Airport in Delhi, a rare gesture, usually reserved for leaders like Trump 2020, Japan's Abe 2017, or Qatar's Emir 2024. Putin's inclusion highlights Russia's strategic importance to India. This is Putin's first visit to India since the Ukraine war began in 2022, happening at a critical moment when US-Russia talks show no progress. Why was Modi's gesture so important? Since taking office in 2014, Modi has personally greeted only a select few leaders. His welcome signals India's message to the world. India continues its balanced foreign policy, close ties with the US, deep defense cooperation with Russia, economic partnership with Europe, and strategic positioning across the Indo-Pacific, while viewing China as a major rival. 1 year ago, when Modi visited Moscow, he was welcomed not by Putin, but by Russia's first deputy PM Denis Manturov. Indian media noted Manturov's reception, far below Putin, contrasted sharply with how China was received. At the time, a lower-ranking Russian official greeted Xi Jinping in Moscow, a signal of Russia's prioritization of India over China. Russia remains India's key defense supplier, long-term strategic partner, and reliable energy source. As Europe isolates Russia, India's warm welcome to Putin shows its commitment to long-term relations despite geopolitical pressure. And this is where today's commentary concludes. Thank you for watching. Goodbye, and see you in future programs.